listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
And welcome back. You're listening to The Social Workers live radio talk show on WCDB Albany. My name is Eric Hardiman, and I'm here with my my permanent co-host, Alyssa Lotmore. Welcome back, Alyssa.
Hi, Eric. It's great to be back for the semester, our first show of fall 2017.
This is our first live show. We've done a couple airings of previously recorded shows, and we hope to do more live shows in the coming weeks as well.
We have a few guests lined that we're scheduling right now, some authors who have written books on self-care and clinical social work, so it should be a really great semester.
Excellent. So if you just tuned in, this is the Social Workers live radio talk show. We do a talk show here at least monthly and sometimes more than monthly on Thursday mornings at 10 o'clock. And if you're interested in checking out archived versions of our old shows, you can listen to us on YouTube. You can catch us on Twitter and Facebook as well. Alyssa, do you want to give folks the information for that?
Well, we're the Social Workers FM. So if you go, we have our website right on the University of Albany School of Social Welfare's webpage, where it gives all archived versions, links to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel.
So we have a special guest on the telephone today. We'll be doing a telephone live interview with Malikah Shaheed. Malikah is a graduate of DeUville College School of Liberal Arts in Buffalo and of the Albany University School of Social Welfare right here at SUNY. Upon completion of her MSW degree, she began her career in child welfare in Washington, D.C. She has a combined 15 years of both macro and micro level social work experience, including in the clinical setting. Ms. Shaheed is the author of Foster and Adoptive Parent Recruitment Training and Licensing, a brand new workbook. We welcome her today on the telephone, and we'd like to discuss her recent work. Malikah, can you hear us?
Yes, I absolutely can. Good morning.
Great. Thanks for being on our show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, it's always
Very
great.
Exciting.
It's always great to have one of our alums come on. And one thing, I was talking to some students the other day who were interested in learning about social work. They wanted to know what you can do with the degree. And I think this just shows what you're doing right now with foster care. It shows how diverse our degree in social welfare is, how many different things you can do. And I'm glad you're on to talk about today, because your topic is foster care recruitment and licensing and training. And we don't always think of that when we think of social workers working with foster care. We think of more working individually with clients. So I'm interested to hear about your topic today, and I'm looking forward to jumping into some of our questions.
Great. Well, let's get right into it, Alyssa. It's an exciting topic. It's something that I care deeply and passionately about. And for me, when I was in social work school, I had no idea that I could combine my love of working with clients on an individual basis, as well as adding into some of those macro components that I also love, which are marketing and training and just all those things. So I'm always excited to talk about foster parent recruitment training and licensing to the next generation of change agents, just to make them aware that this is another option, where you can combine both your love of working directly, impacting, and presenting your ideas and the theories of social work, but also combining some of the other things like marketing and the human service side, human resource side.
And marketing is sometimes a word that social workers shy away from and think of as a bad word. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Absolutely. It's something that we definitely shy away from. I don't know what's worse, marketing or, math, which one makes us run faster. But for me, I just love marketing. I love going with an idea, formulating it, and then presenting it to others and watching it grow. But I also love working with my clients. So for me, as I was researching and speaking with the different professors and things like that in class, I was always like, what could I possibly do that combines both aspects where that I could get up and kind of train and talk about, whatever it is that I was training on, but also have face-to-face, one-on-one time where I can use my assessment skills, where I can talk about, CBT or, trauma and be trauma-informed. Mm-hmm. And there's really limited options. There's not that much that combines the marketing or the other aspects, but as well as the clinical. And so
Sure.
I stumbled upon foster care recruitment training and licensing on accident. It was the other goal of mine, which was to always live in Washington, D.C. So as I was graduating in 2004, I began researching the job market. And one of the professors that I had, Dr. Claiborne, she said, I think, you should look into child welfare. And just from that, it sparked curiosity in me. And so I began researching child welfare and all that I could do with my MSW in child welfare. And so when I arrived in Washington, D.C., there was an agency that had just moved into the region. They were brand new, and they were looking for what is called a recruiter. And I said, well, I didn't go into human resources. I'm a social worker. I want to work with people. I want to address social change and policy and, do assessments, do some case management. So as I read the job description further, it entailed, doing a home study and going and meeting with a family, whether it's a mom and mom or a mom and dad or a single woman or a single man, but meeting with the family, doing the assessment, doing the biopsychosocial, and putting together a social history to see if they were appropriate to place a child in the home.
And that's an important aspect of this, because when we think of a social work degree, you're using words like assessments and understanding more about the family and looking at the dynamics and is this a good placement. But on this side that you're doing, which is a recruitment, which seems a little bit more macro based, it's something that you still need those skills. You still need that social work background. And
Absolutely.
I was looking at the workbook that you sent. You sent a excerpt of your workbook, and you had said that there's 500,000 children in foster care throughout the United States, and so many of them are waiting for adoption, and they still need homes to foster care homes. So when you're looking at this, what you do, and we say about marketing and how sometimes for social workers it's the word that makes us cringe, in this sense, marketing is something that is helping to place children in good homes. So you need to do that market to make a positive change. So can you explain a little bit about the work that you do? Because for some of us, I never really heard about this topic or this job that you're doing until you mentioned it to me. I didn't know that social workers were even in this role. Could you sort of explain a little bit about what sort of foster and adoptive parenting recruitment and training looks like to a social worker or a social work student who might be interested in taking this path?
Absolutely. So basically what happens is that as children enter into foster care, foster care throughout the United States, they need to be placed into homes. So that's kind of like the first step. So we have children who need foster homes. Okay? So then they're identified to go with an agency and be placed within those agencies. So that's the second step. So now we need someone who's going to ensure that, how do we get these homes? Do they just appear? Nope. That's where the social worker comes in, or, other licensing professionals, because there are other licensing professionals, such as an LPC or an LMHC, that, can also enter into the space. But, that's where we come in.
No.
We come in and we ensure that the home is safe. That's always first and foremost. And after we ensure, how do we ensure that the home is safe? We want to meet with the family. We want to sit down, get a social history of who they are, where did they come from, what does your family branch look like, and also pull together a criminal history, a financial history, a medical history. And from there, we want to assess and pull together all those components to make sure that they would be an appropriate placement to move forward to get their license from the state in which they reside.
Okay.
Now, do you look at, I worked, my first internship was in foster care, and there's different needs based on the children that are each child is individual and unique and has their own background, their own history, and some need more support than others. So when you're placing children with families, do you try to figure out which is a good match for which children and what supports different families might need in regards to the child that they're going to take into their home? How do you do the placement process with making sure it's a correct fit? Because even though a person might be qualified to be a great foster parent for in terms of safety, sometimes based on the needs of the child, that might be not the best fit for that one individual child.
Exactly. And you have children that are like, well, because of different trauma, and this is where that social work background is so important in the education and the understanding that we have. It just rolls so perfectly into recruitment, training, and licensing, because that's where that skill set comes in. So as you're doing your assessment and you're speaking with the family and the potential parents, you want to be able to flush out, exactly, are you looking for a small child? What type of behaviors are a deal breaker for you? Things like that. So that way, when the interdisciplinary team sits down to do the placement or the recommendation for a placement, rather, it's a good fit. And the child is not being moved because it wasn't a good fit. So those are the types of questions that are flushed out during that home study. What type of child would you feel most confident in parenting in the long run? So, if you have someone who says, I really want an infant, I want a 2-year-old, so that I can eventually adopt, placing a 16-year-old there who has been in numerous group homes, who has, coming with, a lot of trauma, wouldn't be a good placement. The probability that there's going to be disruptions in the home are very high.
So is the trend not the trend, but is it more common and easier, I guess, to find individuals who are likely to be a foster parent to kids like under 5 or under 7?
Yes. Unfortunately, Alyssa, that is, everyone wants, the 5-year-old, everyone. So it's a lot more difficult to place a 16-year-old who entered into care when they were just, say, 5 years old, and just say they were in one home, for 8 years. So at that point, they were 14, but it just didn't work out that there was adoption. And that happens a lot of times. It's like, a family may have to move overseas or something like that. So the child is re-entering into the foster care system from being in a long-term placement, and their age is now it's a factor and a barrier in placement. And that's a hard
thing. And that's a hard thing. When I was working in foster care, I was working with the kids about to age out. That 16, 17, 18 those 18, and they were trying to get the life skills, and they were trying to also process the fact that they're going to leave and age out of foster care, and they don't have that family base. They don't have really any supports because all the people that they've been working with are now, they're done. They're now moving on to be on their own and trying to get those independent living skills and be able to sort of function. So when your job is really important because you are trying to connect kids so they have families, they have resources, they have people that are with them throughout this journey.
Yes. And one of the things that I always think is extremely important to highlight is that that is where the marketing component comes in, because that is the other 50% of the social worker's big responsibility. Yes, it's getting in there, doing the home study and ensuring that the home is appropriate, but the other piece of that is the marketing. And that's where marketing is so important, because as you're at the health fair, or you've got the phone call of the interested parent, you want to be able to articulate that, we really need homes for that particular age group. You want to be able to convey that message. Do you know anyone? Would you like to refer people? And just putting together different marketing strategies and things like that, so that they're visible, and that 2 or 3 people who would consider it, they see it, they hear about it, and then they follow through and make the phone call.
Sure.
Yeah, it seems like marketing classes should be incorporated into the social work curriculum.
Yes.
So Malikah,
yes, because go right ahead, Eric.
Malikah, tell us a little bit about your workbook.
Okay, foster parent and adoptive parent recruitment, training, and licensing was a brainchild that I had because of urging from others in the profession. It previously, when we had first started talking, I had discussed how when I moved to Washington, D.C., I was matched with an agency that had literally just opened their doors there. They were brand new. No one knew that they were there. No one. So here I came, fresh out of school, green thumbed, energetic, no clue what I was doing. And from day one until 365 days later, I was able to license 40 homes, which is unprecedented. And not only did I license 40 homes, but the agency was one of the most, if you were just walking down the street and you said the agency's name, people recognized it. So that was accomplished in 365 days, and people were just astounded by it. And, so one of the questions was, Malikah, how did you do it? How did you get this done? So I sat down and I wrote it down, basically. How did I do it? I started with little small things that you wouldn't think of. Canvassing. I would literally print up flyers and walk around the entire neighborhood in which our agency was located. And I would put a flyer on everyone's door.
Well, I mean, it's something different. And I just want to ask, were you the only social worker there, or were there other people with your backgrounds for doing this?
Okay,
at the agency?
So how most foster agencies are designed is that specialize in foster care and or adoption. Is there social workers who go and visit the children once a week or twice a month, whatever their contract.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I'm familiar with. That's the role that I'm familiar with for a social work professional.
And then there's always that person in the office in the back that no one knows what the back they're doing.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the recruiter. That's the home licenser or the home finder. Different title in different places.
Yeah.
But that's the home finder. She's sitting way in the back, or he, and no one has any idea what they're doing back there. But they know they're back there, and they're like, the nicest person ever in the office. But that's what they're doing way back there.
And are they typically social workers, or are they usually any other degree to recruit? Are they geared toward the social work professions, or were you just they are? Okay.
Yes. Excellent question, Alyssa, which I get that a lot from students when I speak on the topic. Excellent question. But, okay, there's a couple of different caveats in that, and I always have to really flush this out. Okay, certain states require that the person who signs the home study must be a licensed social worker. Okay, so if you're talking New York State, then the recruiter can be, anyone, the actual recruiter. But in New York State, the person who signs the home study, which is the social history and assessment, must be a licensed professional. So most agencies, instead of separating it, they just combine the position.
Okay.
Like, recruit and do the home studies. But then there's some agencies who just contract for the person who does the home study.
Well, it seems like it's a more straightforward path to have the social worker right in that role. And plus, I think for you, or for this role, you have that background in social work that helps you identify the families, really be able to engage more with them and find out if it's a good match for them. So I think that having that social worker in that role and not just somebody else and a social worker signing off is really a benefit for the youth and the families involved to make sure it's a good fit.
Absolutely.
And if there's a social worker, because we're finishing up, we have a few more minutes left of our segment, but if there's a social work student who said, well, hey, I'm interested in working with children, youth, and families. I'm not really interested in the micro aspect solely, like that social worker who's going in and just checking on the kids weekly and working with the families. If they might be interested in this macro-ish mix of macro, micro, but a little bit more macro role, what can they do to prepare? How are they able to, are there classes? How can they get into this type of work?
Yeah, so
I'm assuming reading your workbook would be a good start.
Yeah.
But after that, when they're trying to find employment, are there certain types of skills, or are there certain ways to prepare them to enter this type of field?
That is such an excellent question, Alyssa, and I care so deeply about our next generation of change agents. And I'm always, thinking about that question and, just how do we prepare them for, the ones who particularly like the macro-micro combo. It's like, can I get a combo number 1, please? So I personally don't think that there is a way that you can be prepared. It's because I wasn't prepared. I had no idea. I had a professor or two, Dr. Miller, Dr. Claiborne, who were able to identify my strengths to me. So with those strengths, I was able to say, oh, okay, so, I can go into this field, and then it was an accident. So, how I found recruitment, training, and licensing. So I would say to our next generation of change agents to identify your strengths. So if you know that you love training, but you cannot go without your passion for meeting with the family, sitting down, discussing theories and really delving into therapy. But you also love paperwork. Then you love that. You have to find a way to combine the two of those, and the best way to go about it is trial and error.
Sure. By
looking at the different positions that are on whichever search engine you go on and apply and learn. There's really no magic formula to it.
But it does sound like you have a vision of social work practice that is not narrow. It's not a vision that simply means being a clinician or a therapist, but it means social work as community organizer, social work as public educator, social worker as family advocate, as policy analyst, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, exactly, Eric. I think that we already wear all of those hats.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we're canvassing and informing the community around us that we're here and this is the service that we offer, in that moment, we're still a social worker, but we're information workers, which I believe should always be our first hat.
Right.
To be an information worker.
Well, I think this was a really great segment. I'm so glad you came on. You are an alum, so I'm really happy about that.
Thank you, Alyssa.
I think you're doing great work, and I'm glad that you shared this other aspect of how social workers can be involved in foster care without simply being involved in the micro aspect of it. And I think it also highlighted like I said, the diversity of our field and all that we can do with a degree in social work. And it's not something that's, I'm a social worker and I do X. There's so many different ways that we can share our expertise and use the skills that we have and learn as in social work school to really make a difference in many different aspects of the society, many different populations. So I want to thank you again for coming on. And if anyone tuned in, we're here with Malikah Shaheed, and she's a graduate of the University at Albany's MSW program, and she does foster care recruitment and training and has a workbook out to assist individuals in really being able to identify homes and match children with families for successful outcomes.
Thanks so much for being on, Malikah. We enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, and so did I. I love, just spreading the word, and I think that part of who we are as well is to let our light shine so everyone knows that, we're Albany social workers. We're not just any old social workers.
Great. So you've been listening.
We're Albany social workers.
Thanks so much, Malikah. So for our listeners, you've been listening to the Social Workers Live radio show, and we've had an interview via telephone with Malikah Shaheed. We'll be on again soon. Alyssa, is that right?
Yes, we have 2 exciting guests lined up. I haven't confirmed them yet, so I can't announce who they are, but they are 2 authors, 2 separate shows. Authors, one published a book on self-care, and the other one published her second book on clinical social work, and it's really exciting. I've been talking to them via email, and we're going to hopefully have them both on 2 weeks in November.
Great. And hopefully we can get some more students involved this year as well, too.
We always love students involved.
Yes. So speaking of marketing, Alyssa, can you give us the details once more on how to find old episodes of The Social Workers?
We do have a YouTube channel where all our past episodes are archived, Social Workers FM, and on the UAlbany website, if you go to albany.edu/SSW, the Social Workers Radio Talk Show has a web page with all our shows and links, and I just updated it so it is accurate. Our past show was with Sam Fletcher, who talked about advocacy, lifelong activists, and that show is up on the website.